Hey everybody, it's Jason from the Texas Gun Vault, and once again I'm coming to you with another range report. Now today's range report is not on a gun that has been lent to the channel. It's again one from my personal collection, and not only is it from my personal collection, it is one of my personal carry guns. And this is part of my series of the guns of my carry rotation. Today we're going to be taking a look at a classic firearm from HK, the HK USP Compact, and this one is chambered in .357 SIG. Now this is a gun that did start out chambered in .40 Smith & Wesson. In fact, the USP was designed around the .40 Smith & Wesson cartridge, but I've always liked the .357 SIG, and I was not able to find one of these USPs in .357 SIG. So what did I do? Well, of course you could just buy a barrel and convert it, but I'm not a big fan of having it say 40 on the side, but actually be internally a .357 SIG. So I have my original barrel, recoil spring, and slide, but I was able to procure a unused .357 slide, and you can even see it is marked on the slide as .357 SIG. I bought a set of sights, recoil spring, and an HK barrel to go with it. So I can convert this between .40 and .357 SIG, but this gun as it sits is in .357 SIG, and that's the way that we are going to review it. The HK USP, otherwise known as the Universal Self-Loading Pistol, is a gun that HK came out with, I think, in direct competition to Glock. They had all these really cool locking systems that used some of their gimmicks, and I'm not calling the P7 or the P9 a gimmick pistol. They definitely really were cool, but they were difficult to manufacture, had a lot of small parts. And they tried to simplify the design and go back to the Browning tilting barrel action to compete with guns, like I said, like SIG or Glock at the time. The USP series was introduced in 1993, and the compact version came out in 1996. Something really interesting about this gun is that it was designed around the .40 Smith & Wesson. Many other guns that in this era were chambered in .40 were really scaled up versions of 9. In my opinion, they were kind of snappy, and I heard stories about some of these guns wearing out prematurely. But when it comes to the USP, it's a very robust design. And yes, they do offer this in 9mm, but it's scaled down from the more powerful cartridges. They also offer this in a .45 variant as well. But I've always been fascinated by .357 SIG. I know in today's world people kind of scoff at it and they go, hey, it's not 10mm. Well, I totally get it's not 10mm, but in the revolver world, many people say .357 Magnum is the perfect self-defense caliber. Well, what is .357 SIG? Well, essentially, it's the semi-auto version of that caliber. They took a 10mm case, shortened it, crimped it, and that gave us the .357 SIG. So it's a bottlenecked cartridge, and the ballistics, while not quite the same as .357 Magnum, do come pretty darn close. The biggest difference is the projectile of .357 SIG is really only .355 instead of .357. So it's a 9mm projectile, essentially in a bottlenecked 10mm case. So this thing really is a screaming cartridge, and I think from a ballistic standpoint is a fantastic self-defense cartridge, and that's why I like to carry .357 SIG in my USP. But before we get into the things that I like and don't like about this pistol, and of course get it to the range, I always want to thank the people that make these videos possible. Normally, this is a gun that's loaned to the channel, and I thank the person that lent it. But in this case, it's me, so thank you, me. I always want to thank my Patreon supporters as always, because through their monthly donations and support, they help keep the lights on around here. I couldn't do it without them. And if you guys want to join my Patreon, there's a link in the description, and you guys can join for as little as $1 a month and get all of these videos early. And as always, I want to thank my primary sponsor who provides the ammunition for these range reports, thus making them financially feasible. And trust me, .357 SIG is expensive. I always want to thank my good friend Mark from Brownworks. And I know if you're here watching this video on the HK USP, you like bougie guns, because that's definitely what HK is. As the saying goes, HK hates you. All their guns are super expensive. And if you like super expensive guns, most likely you have a Colt 1911, a Beretta 92, a CZ75, or a Browning High Power, just to name a few. And those take wood panel grips. And you're thinking to yourself, it would be awesome if I could put on a set of customized wood panel grips on this gun that could be my barbecue gun or a family heirloom. Well, the perfect company for you guys to check out is Brownworks. Mark over there is an artist, he's a craftsman. He makes a wide variety of grips for a wide variety of firearms out of a wide variety of exotic woods and materials. He can even apply things like snake skin and alligator skin. He can put on custom logos, custom engravings, and finish them in a wide variety of colors. He's always coming up with new and innovative products, and he's always adding more grips to his line. So I'm going to ask you guys to go over and check out his website. I'm going to put a link in the comment section below, as well as a coupon code for 10% off your first order. Go over there, see what he has to offer. If you don't find what you're looking for, make sure to contact Mark, because each grip is made to order to your specifications. And when you do contact him, please tell him the Texas Gun Vault sent you. All right, so let's talk about what this pistol is. Once again, we're taking a look at the HK USP Compact. The full-size version of this gun was introduced in 1993 and the Compact in 1996. And as I mentioned, it was designed and built around the .40 Smith & Wesson, which at the time was the new hotness. It was the caliber that was going to defeat the 9mm, but here we are decades later, and 9mm still reigns supreme, but .40 is still out there, and some people are trying to bring it back. Ballistically, it does have some advantages over 9mm. And I like the fact this gun was built around that caliber, because if you do scale it down to 9, it is very, very durable. Now, one of the big advantages to this system that I do like that HK created is they have many different variants. You'll notice that I do have a selector on both sides of the gun. It works as a decocker and a safety. And depending on the variant you have, you can carry this in a number of different configurations. From cocked and locked, like a 1911, you can also carry it with the hammer down on a loaded chamber. It is a very versatile gun depending on how you want to carry it. And that's one of the big advantages that it offers over many of its competitors. You can't do that with Glock, and you can't do that with SIG. And if you want to change the variant, you can do it by just exchanging a couple of parts internally. And that conversion really is not that hard to do. So you get so many options right out of the box. So let's talk about the things that I like and don't like about this gun. And the first thing I really like about it is that it's an HK. And yes, some people accuse me of being a gun snob and a brand snob, and I totally get it. There are definitely brands that I look at and go, I just want that gun because of the brand. And well, HK is one of those brands, and I think it is to a lot of gun owners. It's kind of weird. Everyone jokes that HK hates you because they won't bring out the guns we want. They don't make enough guns. Their guns are too expensive, but yet people still want them. Maybe it's just the fact that they're harder to get and they're a little bit more rare. They're also iconic. They're used in movies and by militaries around the world. So of course, everybody wants to have those guns. They're just awesome guns, and I love HK. They're known for durability and reliability, and these guns are over-tested. You've heard the stories of like the HK Mark 23 that was tested to 50,000 rounds without a malfunction. Well, this gun essentially is the predecessor to that, or the USP series is the predecessor to that. It's designed on the same platform, so you know this gun is rugged, it's reliable, and it's durable. Something else that I really like about these German design guns is the magazine release. I know in America we like to have those push buttons on the side, but over here in Germany they use a paddle release. So right here is the paddle release. On the side of the trigger guard, you push down on it, and that's what drops the magazine. And that control is ambi right from the factory. I also like the fact this is a compact size handgun. I actually find that I shoot compact size handguns the best. They're the great middle ground, or the great compromise. I do like full size, but the subcompacts are just usually a little bit too snappy. I can use this as a range gun, I can use it as a carry gun, I can use it as a self-defense gun. It has adequate capacity. It's just that perfect size. And I've talked about that when I've reviewed guns like the Glock 19. It's just the ultimate size that I think we've kind of figured out. It's the do-all size. It's not great at everything, but it's pretty good at most things. I also mentioned that I like the fact this thing has so many different variants in how you can carry it. Personally, I like to carry this gun with the hammer down on a loaded chamber. So if I did load the gun, you can use the decocker and you are good to go. And that first pull is going to be really heavy and long, and then every pull afterwards would be single action. I find that is, for me, the best way to carry this. I don't have to worry about a safety. But if you are coming from the 1911 world and prefer cocked and locked, you can do that with this gun safely, where you can't do it with other guns like the Browning High Power. So you have so many different carry options. The other thing I like about this is they have a buffer system. Now let me show you the slide to the 40 conversion that I have, and you'll notice on the recoil spring we do have a little sliding polymer buffer. Maybe this is neoprene. I'm not sure what this material is, but I really feel like this does a really good job at dampening some of that recoil. And 40 and 357 SIG are pretty snappy cartridges. And this is one of the things that they tout as their technological advances with the USP series. The full size use a dual recoil spring, but this buffer is used on the single recoil spring in the compact size. But now let's talk about a couple things about this gun that I don't like. And the first thing I want to say maybe is not something that I don't like, it's more of a neutral comment, and that is going to be the trigger. Now, the trigger in this gun is definitely designed more for military and police use. It's long, it's heavy, it's kind of gritty, it's kind of mechanical. Let me show you here on camera what this looks like. So here is the single action pull. Kind of long. You can hear how mechanical and gritty it is. It does have a wall. It's not super heavy on the single action side. You do have a tactile and audible reset, and you have a little bit of take up. You're back at that wall. Let me show you one more time. There's that take up, gritty, wall, break. Now, double action. This thing is long, heavy. Yeah, that might be a safety feature to some people. I really feel like it is. In fact, most of the time, if you are going to carry it double action, you will decock it, and that hammer won't go all the way down, so the trigger pull will be a little bit lighter here, but it's still definitely really, really heavy. So one of the things that I like to do is show you guys the trigger pull of these. So let me get out the Lineman trigger pull weight gauge, and let's actually find out what the weight is on both single and double action on this trigger. So as I've mentioned, the triggers in these USPs are kind of mid. They're really heavy, they're a little bit gritty, but they definitely work. They're good for practical use, and I definitely think they are more tailored towards military and police use than anything else, especially that really long double action pull in the beginning. It's quite heavy. And so I want to test this trigger out and see what the pull is on it, and I want to thank a local fan and subscriber once again, Craig, who gave this gauge to the channel. Let's go ahead and drop the magazine, ensure there's no ammunition inside, then of course visually inspect the chamber. Let's go ahead and do the single action side first, because I know I'm able to test that. The double action side might be a little bit too heavy, but let's clear all the averages out, and here we go. In single action, our first pull, 4 pounds, 1.8 ounces, and that is pretty light, but it is a little bit gritty on the take-up. £4 pounds, 0.7 ounces. £4 pounds, 3.9 ounces. £4 pounds, 1.7 ounces. And finally we have 4 pounds, 4.4 ounces, which gives us an average of 4 pounds, 2.5 ounces. Now that's a pretty darn good single action pull. But as I said, it does feel a little bit mechanical, a little bit gritty, but single action side, really, really nice. Now let's try this in double action. Now this, I think, is an exceptionally heavy trigger pull, and I do think it is designed this way on purpose. So if you're not going to carry it with the safety on, this first double action pull is your safety. Now I'm going to test this after the decock. So I'm assuming that most people, if they do load one in the chamber, they are going to decock it. So I'm not going to test it with the hammer completely down. So the way I think most people would carry it. So there it is. Let me go ahead and clear the average. And let's try this in double action. And this, I think, is a little bit hard to test. 10 pounds, 6.6 ounces. £10, 12.2 ounces. £10, 15.1 ounces. £10, 14.9 ounces. And finally, £11, 0.9 ounces, which gives us an average of 10 pounds, 13.1 ounces. And as you can see, that is a pretty darn heavy trigger pull, even in double action, but I feel like it is designed that way on purpose. As I mentioned, if this is going to be carried by police or military, and they're going to carry with one in the chamber and the hammer down, you don't want them having a very light trigger on that first pull, because we're dealing with things like stressful situations and adrenaline. So this gun does give you so many different ways of carrying it, whether that be cocked and locked, and you can also do a double action, single action. So some people are going to like that, and it gives you tons of variety. All right, so that is the trigger pull. Not great, but not bad. And let's get back to the rest of this range report and the other things about this gun I may not like. And as I said, this trigger is kind of neutral. It's not great, but it's not bad. So I'm not going to say it's terrible and something that I don't like. It's something I can definitely manage. And maybe it's just the perfect trigger for this platform. This gun, as it sits, is not designed to be a target gun. It's designed to be a self-defense, military, and police handgun. And so maybe that trigger is just absolutely perfect. But there are a couple things about this gun that I don't like. And one of them is the fact this uses a proprietary rail. Now, when this came out in the 1990s, M1913 Picatinny rail was not standardized yet, so some companies created their own rail systems. Well, 1913 rail is now the standard, and you would think that they would modernize this design, but nope. HK hates you. To this day, if you go buy a HK USP, you're still going to get that proprietary rail. Now, you can put M1913 rails on this, you just have to have an adapter. Why they haven't come out with a Gen 2 and adjust the frame is beyond me. They just choose not to do that. After all, HK hates you. The other thing about this gun that I don't like, but it's something that I can change, is the fact they decided to put on a bobbed hammer. Now, the full-size guns use one that has a tang to it. This one, however, does not have that. I feel like aesthetically that doesn't look very good, and if I ever wanted to manipulate the hammer, I really can't. But I understand why they put it on there, because this is a concealed carry gun. You don't want it to snag on anything. So there's the bobbed hammer. Yeah, I just don't like the way that looks. Now, I can change that out. It's something that I may do in the future, but I understand why it's on the compact variants. But I do wish that they would put a normal hammer on it. But that's just kind of a personal choice. But those are really the only two things about this gun I'm not a big fan of. All right, so let's get this thing to the range and let's see how it shoots. Now, in full disclosure, this is actually the first time I am ever shooting this with the 357 conversion on it. I've been carrying it in 40 for a long time, but now I really do need to get it to the range and just make sure this thing works. So I am shooting this in a way for the first time, like many of my other range reports. So here we go. Let's take the USP Compact 357 SIG to the range. Let's just make sure it works. Let's get my first impressions and let's just see if this conversion does its thing. Well, I can tell you I'm really happy with that first magazine. This gun is shooting great, very accurate, very happy with it. I'm really impressed with the fact that it doesn't have a large recoil impulse. You know, normally when you shoot a gun in 40 or 357 SIG, it can be a little bit snappy. But as I told you, this gun was designed around the 40 Smith & Wesson, so the slide is going to be a little bit thicker, a little bit more robust. That extra mass, I think, mitigates that recoil impulse. And the trigger is pretty good for what it is. Even though, as I said, it's just kind of a mid-trigger, it does its job. All right, so let's set up the target at about twice the distance here, about 12 to 15 yards. I'm gonna go for the head on this IDPA target, see if this grouping stays the same, and if I continue to shoot this gun this well. All right, and so I am shooting this gun just a little bit to the left, and it could be the sights. As I told you, I built this slide myself, and maybe that front sight isn't on there exactly centered, and I can adjust that. But it does look pretty good here on the workbench, but I might have to adjust that in the future. I'm also noticing that this gun has a little bit higher bore axis, just like a SIG P series of pistols. If you're used to a gun with a lower bore axis, you might notice that. Some people don't like the flip that they will feel in their hand with those higher bore axis guns. But this gun doesn't really feel like it's flipping all that much, but you do notice it does sit a little bit higher in your hand than many of its competitors. All right, so let's set out the target now at about 20 to 25 yards, and I'm going to do what I call the bench rest test. I try to take the human element out of it, shoot this gun at the furthest distance I can at this range. The only issue I usually have is when I'm using these iron sights, I can't always see where the rounds are impacting the targets. So I'm just going to try to shoot for the center of the target, see what the grouping is like, and although this is a duty or self-defense handgun, I'm not expecting this thing to be a target gun. I'm still hoping that it performs well. So here we go, 20 to 25 yards bench resting, and let's see how I do. And as expected, the group did open up a little bit, but I think for practical accuracy at that distance, it was okay. Another reason I might be shooting this a little bit to the left is often when it comes to compact and subcompact handguns, I typically put too much finger in the trigger guard. And when I pull that trigger back, especially if it's a heavier trigger, I end up moving the gun a little bit to the left. And that's just some of my shooting technique that I personally have to work on. But overall, I think the gun is functioning fine, it's working fine, and has decent accuracy for the type of carry that I'm going to be using this gun for. Alright, so the next test I'm going to do is to test it in double action only. So after each shot, I will manually decock the hammer. And I want to see if that first shot, that double action pull, really affects my accuracy. So far, I'm shooting a little bit to the left, but maybe just like I shoot SIG P-Series pistols better double action than I do single action, and it could be because I'm more deliberate with my shots. I just want to see if that 10-pound trigger pull affects my accuracy and how generally good the gun is and performs if you had to shoot it double action only or using double action on that first shot. So here we go. Let's set the target out about 6 or 7 yards, double action only, and see how I do. And I'll take those results any day of the week. I'm really happy with how I shot it. And I think that has to do with the fact that this trigger pull is actually relatively predictable in double action. Yes, it is long and gritty, but you know exactly where that trigger is going to break. And it is a relatively heavy trigger pull, which I mentioned is a safety feature, I think, for a gun designed for military and law enforcement, because the people in those situations might be under a lot of stress, might have adrenaline flowing in certain circumstances, and you don't want them having a target trigger where they could have a negligent discharge. But with training, this double action pull is very predictable and you can be very accurate with it. Alright, so the next test I want to do is the quick magazine change test. I want to see how fast I can shoot this gun, but also I really love these magazine releases on the side with those little paddles. I talked about that. They are ambi. You can hit them with your shooting finger, with your thumb. You can do both if you have to use macro muscle movements to get that magazine out of there. So I'm hoping I can shoot this gun relatively fast, drop this magazine, and get it back in action relatively quick. I find this system to be very ergonomic. So here we go. Let me see how fast I can shoot this gun, drop the magazine, get it back in action, and if I can keep these rounds on target, just point shooting. And I'm pretty happy with that. I can shoot this gun pretty fast, especially in single action. Now, when it came to that first shot, which was in double action, I was a little bit slow. That first pull is long and heavy, but as I said, I really think it's designed that way. And I do find these magazine releases to be very ergonomic, well designed, and I wish more companies offered them. I do prefer the ones on the HK 45 a little bit more because they are bigger and longer, but these work absolutely fine. So what are my final thoughts on the HK USP Compact chambered in 357 SIG? Well, if you're looking for a robust, well-designed, well-functioning, reliable firearm, this is the perfect gun for you. A gun designed for the military and law enforcement communities that I think works great in many civilian applications. No, this is not a gun that is going to compete with a $3,000 2011. But when it comes to competing with Glock and SIG, I think it's absolutely perfect. And of course, if you do like bougie guns, well, you can't go wrong with an HK. This gun ran flawlessly at the range. I had no issues whatsoever, and it's chambered in my favorite personal self-defense caliber, .357 SIG. And as I mentioned, if you own one of these guns chambered in .40, you can chamber it in .357 SIG with just a barrel swap. But if you're lucky enough to have one of the original ones in .357 SIG, you can chamber it in .40. The two calibers are interchangeable. You just have to change the barrel. The magazines work the same on both calibers. This is such a versatile gun on how you want to carry it, cocked and locked. If you want to carry it with one in the chamber and the hammer down, you can even carry it with one in the chamber, hammer down, and the safety on. You have so many options. It's a great gun, and it has a great heritage. So on my star system, how would I rate the HK USP Compact in .357 SIG? Well, this gun easily gets 4 out of 5 stars. There's a few things that date it, like the rail, and I think the design is a little bit outdated. It does look a little bit blocky. And I do shoot it a little bit to the left, but that could be me, could be the sights. But overall, this is just a fantastic gun. Very natural shooting. I do like the trigger in it, even though it is not a great target trigger. It's not going to be a light trigger. But as this gun comes from HK, it is a beast. And even being a compact size handgun, it is thick, and you guys know it's going to be durable and reliable. So 4 out of 5 stars for the HK USP Compact, one of the guns of my carry rotation and chambered in my personal favorite self-defense cartridge. So what do you guys think? Do you guys like the HK USP? And what do you think of .357 SIG? I would love to know your thoughts in the comment section below. And as always, thanks for watching.